everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I'm joined by my brother Matt.
Hello.
You know, Sunday is the Oscars.
Sunday is the Oscars.
It is the 80th Academy Awards, where a group of faceless, vague people give a tiny golden naked man
That's right.
to their favorite movie.
It's a strange trophy, but it means a lot. It means a lot to the people making the movies.
Yes, it does. And we're saying this as if nobody knows what the Oscars is, so we should probably move on. But there was actually some question this year as to whether or not there would be a A-list Oscar show with celebrities.
Because of the writer's strike.
That's right. And because the writer's strike recently ended last week, there will actually be a full-blown regalia, all the typical fare. And so that's cool. And this year, it seemed to be a lot of Westerns that hit the theater.
That's true.
There is sort of a return to the American kind of dusty Southern film, and No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood, they are actually tied with 8 nominations each as the most nominated films this year. A lot of people probably didn't see those movies, and it's interesting how you'll talk to the average Joe sometimes and they'll say, well, it wasn't a very good year for movies. And I find a lot of times that means one of two things. They haven't seen all the movies, which is extremely likely, or they can't remember the good things that they did see.
That's true.
And I don't know about you, but I found myself kind of running into this problem about a year ago when I wanted to be able to recommend good films to people who asked me, but I wasn't able to remember, even, as I get older, sometimes I'm not even able to remember the movies I saw like last week.
Ooh, that's sad, isn't it? Yeah. To some extent, I think as children, we watched the same movies over and over again.
Right.
If you had something you liked, you stuck with it until you memorized it.
Yeah, and I wasn't satisfied with not being able to remember great movies that I had seen. I wanted to honor those films. So what I started doing was actually keeping a list. And Amber keeps me on track with this. After we watch a movie, we'll write it down, and it leads to me being able to speak, I think, accurately when someone asks me my favorite film. And that sounds a little bit braggadocious, I know, but I've kept this list so that I don't forget what my favorite films are.
Right. A diary of consumption, as it were.
Exactly. Diary of Consumption, starring Matt Miller. But
it's a good indie, yeah.
It's a horror film about a fat guy.
Yeah. Actually, it's about anorexia.
Exactly. It's an anorexic psychopath. Amazing film. Heartwarming performances. Triumph, says Joel Siegel.
The things I went through.
You dyed your hair. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so the Oscars.
The Oscars, yeah, I would say this year you're right. It's a lot of Westerns and I guess a period piece when you look at atonement. I think the Oscars do to some sense kind of flip-flop between years where they recognize artsy films and then years where they give it to Martin Scorsese for The Departed, which everybody saw, I believe. And it was a good movie, but necessarily the Oscar, the best movie? I don't know.
Yeah, this year I have seen, like I said, a handful of the pictures that they've selected, but I wouldn't necessarily have nominated any of these films. I think No Country for Old Men is my favorite of the list, and yet it's still probably 5th or 6th down there on the list of movies I enjoyed this year. And again, when I say that, it's because there's an actual list on my computer that shows 5 movies, or 10 movies.
Well, I loved No Country for Old Men, and obviously, in our review we gave it pretty high praise. I was a little surprised that it was nominated, but at the same time, the fact that it brings you in and then really disappoints you in a way is so non-cliche that I guess to some extent they couldn't help but recognize it.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned being disappointed because that's my summary of There Will Be Blood.
Okay.
The movie is 3 hours long, and the first hour of that movie, I would practically nominate that hour if I could for a Best Picture.
Okay.
It was so good, so gripping, eloquently put together. First hour, I literally sat there. Barely blinking, just sort of soaking it all in, and unfortunately the next 2 hours did not quite deliver for me. And, much has been made about Daniel Day-Lewis, his acting performance in that movie.
He is really good. Gangs of New York, I mean, he's the standout in that one for sure.
Right. And his acting is completely admirable. I mean, if you're an actor and you want to study, there's some movies, obviously that you might want to watch, like Glengarry Glen Ross.
Right.
This one is definitely a great performance. Unfortunately, his actual character that he plays, is in my mind completely unadmirable. There's nothing to like about him. Him and the sort of opponent character that they set up are sort of just equally dislikable. Despicable. There really aren't any really redeemed characters in this film. Rob was not able to join us tonight, but Rob told me that there will be blood. Just to speak for him for a second, that
Rob told you there will be blood? It's not good.
Yeah, that is not good. And then I was like, why? And then he just hung up, and I was like, okay, here you go. Matt, it's our show, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that was scary. No, Rob actually enjoyed it more than I did. I think he felt that the whole thing went through a very subtle transformation. That the characters they did change ever so subtly, and you saw kind of how they went. And I think he enjoyed that. Unfortunately, for me, I was not able to stay with either of these major characters. So those are my 2 cents on that kind of a mini review in the middle of this sort of discussion. But are there any films, Matt, that you want to highlight? What stuck out for you?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I had thought that The Prestige came out in 2007, but it turns out it was released in October of 2006.
That's right.
And I've kind of beaten to death how much I like The Prestige. I was looking at the list of things that were released in 2007, and on January 5th, Children of Men came out. And I guess you could say that the concept is cliche. It's not quite post-apocalyptic, but it's, post-prosperity.
Right.
But I like the fact that it's a future not too distant and not too ridiculous. Everybody's still driving cars. There's no flying cars. The pacing and the structure, I feel, are very uncliche, and it was technically impressive in the way a lot of the shots go on, for whole chases or whole events. It really affected me when I saw it, and it was one of those movies that stuck with me and that I thought about a lot and recommended to other people. So I think that's the one that I would highlight, as geeky as that might sound.
No, I can remember we were at a Japanese restaurant together, and you said, "Have you seen Children of Men?" I remember you being really excited. Definitely in my top 5 this year.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't keep a diary of consumption, but I do keep all of my ticket stubs.
Oh, cool.
And when I leaf through them, I can generally still remember even the who I saw the movie with.
Right. A movie that is also in my top 5 that is strangely missing from the the documentary category is a movie called The King of Kong, which is about the record holder for Donkey Kong, Billy Mitchell, and a newcomer named Steve Wiebe who comes up and tries to overthrow the high score. It's a true story. And I'll tell you what, there's as much drama in this movie as anything that you can make up.
As long as you're a nerd.
Well, that's the thing, is that, a lot of people who I wouldn't consider nerds have recommended this film. I mean, I visit Rotten Tomatoes a lot, and overwhelmingly critics loved this movie, and I had not even heard of it. That it is not nominated for Best Documentary is really, to me, quite puzzling. I also would like to highlight a little film that will be in the Oscars on Sunday, and that is a little movie about music called Once, which is about, I believe, Irish people, because I had to have the subtitle track on the entire time, even though it is technically English that they're speaking.
The accent is so thick.
It's so thick. But having said that, it's a very simple kind of indie film, and it wasn't until about 45 minutes in when I went, I think I'm watching a musical. And that says something, because a lot of times if you're watching a musical, you know it, because the janitor busts in through the back door sweeping a broom to the music, I hesitate to even say it's a musical because that'll turn people off, but if you like kind of an indie, kind of Irish-voiced thing, I thought it was really good. So watch for Glenn Hansard is the actor. I can't pronounce the woman's name. It's like Markita Ingagova or something, but they're going to perform, so I'm really rooting for them.
Oh, really? That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, now I got to check it out.
How about Zodiac? Did you see that film?
I loved Zodiac, and shot on high def, can't really tell.
No, you can't.
Except for the occasional Grand Theft Auto angle of a taxi cab driving around.
Somebody was commenting that the action in that film looked kind of fake because of that. I definitely didn't notice, and that was my number 2 most loved film. And it's 3 hours long. I mean, by comparison to There Will Be Blood, which sort of lost me after the first hour, this one, I was glued.
Sure, and I feel like the violence is very matter of fact. It's not at all MTV stylized like the Saw movies, which I think is now up to Saw 4.
Right.
I mean, it's annoying how, they'll start playing the rock music and showing sped up, strange, acid-washed angles of blood splattering or people, shaking and twitching.
Well, no, it's like torture pornography.
Yeah, no, right. It's
like,
it is. It's the junk food version.
Right.
Zodiac. It's
Right.
very matter of fact.
It's not glamorized,
Right.
I think is what you're saying. It's not glorified. And I will say that I cannot watch torture. I cannot watch torture films, and I'm disturbed by the trend, kind of.
Well, additionally, most of major network free television right now, the dramas are about murder and death and the investigations of them.
Sure. And I think that there's a way to discuss death and discuss murder in a way that doesn't glorify it. I would point to a film, Schindler's List. Schindler's List is a film with plenty of death, but no one would tell you that film glorifies it. It is there to teach, or it is there to say something else about death besides look how visceral a reaction you can get. So Zodiac,
great movie, very very intellectual. Kind of remind me of Quiz Show in the way that if it rewards you for paying attention, and you've got like intelligent people working on things, and maybe even the time period is a little close.
Quiz Show, by the way, one of my all-time favorites.
Absolutely.
But Zodiac fairly heavily hints towards this theory of who the killer was, and I liked that. And particularly the ending song of the film, which is Hurdy-Gurdy Man by Donovan. That sticks with me.
I had a Donovan CD in my teens, and I listened to it a lot at night even, and whenever that song came on, I had to frickin' change it. I couldn't fall asleep to that song, Mellow Yellow, that's fine.
That's fine. Not as spooky. Yeah. Had Zodiac ended with Mellow Yellow, I think people might have been more confused.
A little, yeah. Well, it would have changed the meaning a lot. I'll tell you what was a great movie, and I'm fairly certain it was in 2007. Every time these guys make another movie, part of me is like, oh man, they can't get it right every time.
Right.
But Ratatouille from Pixar is excellent. It really is. It's it's pretty straightforward stuff, but it's always well done, well executed.
Yeah, Brad Bird can do no wrong in my opinion so far. He's 3 for 3. He's got Iron Giant, he's got Incredibles, and he's got Ratatouille. And
I did not know he did Iron Giant, but wow.
He's one of those names now, like M. Night or somebody, that I will watch whatever he puts out for years to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Give him a topic and he'll deliver.
So my favorite film of the year, one that not a lot of people probably know about that I saw on Rotten Tomatoes, was a movie called Starter for 10. It stars James McAvoy, who is quickly becoming one of Amber and I's favorite actors. I don't know. How do you feel about this guy? I think he's just awesome.
He's going to be in this action film called Wanted.
Correct.
And it's shot on that new digital red camera.
Oh, okay.
And I'm interested in that technically.
Right.
But otherwise, I can't really recall anything that I've seen with James McAvoy in it, except he was in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Right.
Huh?
He was in Narnia as Mr. Tumnus. He's just on a great role here. But that gives me double reason to highlight this film. Starter for 10, my favorite film of the year. And this movie it knocked me down, man. It was so cool. First of all, amazing 80s soundtrack. It's a period film. It's set in 1985. And It's about a very knowledgeable young man who goes to Bristol University in the UK and enters a university challenge team, which is sort of like a quiz show. He sees a girl that he likes, and so there's some love interest there and some things, but I just thought it was so well put together, and especially this soundtrack, which is The Cure, Tears for Fears, all these great bands.
As long as you're a fan of the 80s.
Exactly. I mean, maybe people are turned off by that, but I was just like, oh, this is one I probably need to own.
Awesome. On the subject of what you buy, you're going to be very limited very soon here. It was the day after Valentine's Day.
There you go.
That Walmart announced that they had picked Blu-ray over HD DVD.
Mm-hmm. All right, and Netflix as well.
Netflix, Best Buy. And that same day, there were rumors that Toshiba was getting ready to pull out of HD DVD, effectively putting an end to the format war. And then I would say it was officially on the 19th.
Right, I just saw the quote today in the news that said that they will officially no longer produce or market HD DVD. It's strange how in the 80s, I want to say, VHS kind of drifted into popularity as far as I understand. But with this, you have sort of like a day when you can clearly just tell people that, all right, this is when it officially became Blu-ray that is the winner.
Yeah, I think word traveled slower back then.
Sure.
If you talk about the 80s, that's when if somebody in school told you that Luke Skywalker really got his hand cut off, or that one of the members of New Kids on the Block collapsed on stage and had an appendectomy right there on the spot.
Yeah. And you were actually referencing two things that I believed for a short time, so yeah, I appreciate
exactly.
that.
I thought you'd enjoy that.
Thank you.
Then you have no choice but to believe it until you hear otherwise. We know things are happening as they're happening.
Right. How do you feel about the fact that the name of the next format after DVD is Blu-ray?
It's one less syllable.
Okay.
And you get used to everything. Jar Jar Binks.
Boom.
What can I say?
There it is. You know what?
Yeah.
On that note, I think we'll call it quits.
We've got a show.
If you would like to send us an email, please do so. Our email address is mail@growing-up-geek.com. You can also post comments on our website, growing-up-geek.com. A couple ways you can get in touch with us, but let us know your Best Picture winners, Best Picture nominations that you would have done, your thoughts on Blu-ray. We'd love to hear it. And mostly, thank you for listening. I am Brad.
And I'm Matt.
And we will see you later.
Take care.